Hello and welcome to this review of my old logo Dell Model 97 Bigfoot, which is an older, rarer and significantly different version of the much more common and well-known Model 90 Bigfoot, about which I've done several videos before. It's one of the early models which is easily recognized by its use of the older Dell logo on the case, and it's the first version produced by Silitek after they took over production from Alps Electric, who made the original versions. Silitek changed quite a bit during this changeover and cheapened it further down the line as well, with the later models 95, 92 and ultimately 90, which got progressively worse. The easiest way to place these Dell Bigfoot keyboards in the production timeline is by looking at the FCC ID at the back of the board. The original Alps model started with GYI, which is their FCC grantee code, and ended in AT101 or AT101-102, while Silitek, who are now a part of Lighton, starts with GYU and ended with M90-something-SK with progressively lower numbers, so the last one was Model 90 and this one, the M97, is the oldest one. Although it has the same old logo as the Alps Electric models, you can actually visually distinguish the two, as the logo on the Alps models looks like pad printing, or in any case something that's on top of the plastic, while the M97 somehow has the logo sunk into the plastic, strongly resembling dye sublimation, despite the case seemingly being made out of ABS. The plastic the two cases are made out of is also different, and the case on the Alps model is about 130 grams heavier than the case on the Silitek one. It also uses thin ABS keycaps with a mysterious printing method that has elements of silkscreen printing, dye sublimation and UV treatment, much like the Acer KB101A, which appears to have used the same method. Personally, I just think it's a very high quality form of silkscreen printing, but I can't be sure at this time. Unlike the Alps version's keycaps, which were PBT, the ABS caps on the Silitek yellow with age and they shine up faster. All versions of the AT101 used ABS spacebars though. Another thing Silitek changed is that they added a steel bar weighing 160 grams to the case just to make it heavier. Can you imagine a manufacturer nowadays just adding what's basically a steel ingot to your products to make them more cumbersome? Yeah, in today's world it's all about lightness and thinness and stuff like that, but this thing is from an era in which weight was an indication of sturdiness and quality. Well, in this case the weight doesn't add any structural toughness to the keyboard, but it does make it pretty heavy at just under 1.7 kilos, which is a fair amount of heft for a keyboard from the 90s. Specifically, this one is from 1992, and it seems to be one of the earlier Silitek-made AT101s. Remarkably, even though the older Alps-made version doesn't have this steel weight, it's still 50 grams heavier at 1.72 kilos. It feels like a bit of a beast actually. Considering the weight of the case is about 130 grams more, I can only conclude that the chassis on the Alps model must be even thicker and tougher, which is quite impressive. Regardless, the Silitek is still a Bigfoot, so it features excellent build quality with a strong plastic case and a very tough, taut metal chassis. One structural weakness that all Bigfoot keyboards have is that the case is partially held together by these plastic clips, which are clipped in very tightly and are very easy to break off, as you can see on this one, where this clip is missing, and on several of my other Bigfoots, or Big Feet, or whatever, macropods if you will. However, thankfully, it's still held together by 6 big old screws, so even if all the clips break off, such as on this one, it doesn't make the case rattle at all, not even in the corners. It uses Pine Black Alps switches, which are a tactile switch, and which are an earlier iteration of the much more common bamboo Black Alps switches that all the subsequent versions of this keyboard used. You can recognize these pine switches by the slits in the top housing, which the bamboo versions didn't have. The denominations pine and bamboo come from Mousefan, who graded them according to a Japanese ranking system where pine is the highest, above bamboo, and then plum. I mean, it sort of makes sense that plum is the lowest, you would call someone a plum in English too, and bamboo is just really tall grass basically. But what's so special about pine? Why, Japan? Why? In any case, this older Pine variety somehow feels a lot better than the later iterations. The stock switches in the later AT101 models have switches that have a rather rough feeling to them, which is why I always recommend linearizing them into linear black switches, which are extremely smooth and pleasant, or otherwise into clicky black switches, whose increased tactility kind of glosses over the rough feel, and which also improves their sound. But these older Pine switches really don't need any modding, as they feel much better. They have a lot more in common with the salmon switches from the earlier Alps made models than with the later bamboo black switches actually, which themselves feel very different from all the other Alps switches, almost as if they weren't even made by Alps at all. Which I still suspect was actually the case, because Silitek kept making Bigfoot keyboards to at least 2001, which is way off the timeline for complicated Alps keyboards. I've got a gut feeling that Silitek might have made their own black Alps switches, and that those are the bamboo blacks. I don't think I know of a keyboard that uses bamboo blacks that isn't made by Silitek either, or maybe Silitek just bought a million billion switches from Alps all at once and used that to keep manufacturing the boards for a decade or so. As for how the Pine Blacks stack up to salmons exactly, I'd say they're almost exactly the same in terms of key feel. If I try them right next to each other, there's an ever so slight difference between them, but it's so small that it could easily be just a difference in age or switch condition instead. They're really nice switches. I'd say to everyone that doesn't like bamboo blacks, give these Pine switches a try. Very pleasant. Also, they sound a lot better than the bamboo blacks too. Down the line, a lot of small things were changed. The next model, the M95, changed to the new Dell logo and at some point swapped for the bamboo black switches instead of the pine ones. The M92 switched to a different printing method for the new logo, it seems, lost the steel weight in the case, added Windows keys, and made the whole bottom row use convex keys rather than just a spacebar. Finally, the M90 used a straight cable instead of a coiled one, swapped the mysterious printing method for laser engraving, and eventually added a black model near the end of the production timeline. Most of these changes weren't clean breaks though, so there is some variation between models. Because they are rarer and known to be better, originally these old logo models used to be much more expensive, around $80, than the super common Model 90, which you could pick up for a couple of pennies. But because the price of the M90 itself has now inflated to about $80, this model isn't that much more expensive anymore, and if you're going to dish out and have the option of either, I'd recommend picking up one of these instead, as it's much better. Don't bother with the M95 or M92 though, they're not usually all that interesting. And as always with buying Alps, only buy pristine ones, as dirty ones will feel like shit. So don't say I didn't warn you. That's it for this review. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. And following is a typing demonstration of me typing on this keyboard.